So why are we up here? I guess for way of introduction, I'm a level 2 fire service, nationally certified level 2 fire service instructor. Dale has taught at Texas A&M Disaster City. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it's a huge area at Texas A&M where they have all kinds of props that are like tank cars, airplanes, buildings, you name it. You taught down there how many weeks?
25 times, 20 years.
25 times. He's gone down for a week at a time to teach classes down there. So Dale is just looking at his 50th anniversary as a volunteer firefighter. I was on that same department for 33 years, and 11 years before that, I was in industrial firefighting. So that's where we're coming from. And we're going to try to show you a few things that are important to know that not very many folks know. I want to ask a question. I just want to see a show of hands. Does anyone in here know the difference between a flammable liquid and a combustible liquid? Anybody?
First of all, it'll start by itself.
Nice try, but no cigar. That's coming behind me.
Right now.
Okay. Actually, it's what we call the flash point, and that's the temperature at which that liquid gives off flammable vapors. Just to give you an example, gasoline has a flash point of about 45 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. So if it's colder than that, like if you go up in Alaska or the North Pole or someplace like that, or Antarctica, where it gets down below 45 degrees, minus 45 degrees, you know, you've probably seen pictures of people that have their airplanes parked and they got these big shrouds and they got a fire going underneath there. Keep it warm, because if they don't keep it warm, the gasoline will not burn in the engine. It's got to be above 45 degrees Fahrenheit, or it won't make flammable vapors. So that's the flash point. If your flash point is above about 110 degrees, then it would be a combustible liquid. If it's below that, it would be a flammable liquid. Now, why is that important? Let's take a look at some common things that we use here. This is mineral spirits. If I look at this can, right on the front here, it says danger, combustible liquid. There are some other things there that we're not going to talk about right now. If I pull out, for example, here's acetone, danger, extremely flammable liquid and vapors. There's a huge difference between these two things. If I spilled a gallon of this in my shop, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I'd go get some sawdust and sop it up and clean it up. If I spilled a gallon of this in my shop, I would be extremely concerned. And I'll show you why. We'll put, let's see, we'll take a little bit of this acetone, and we're going to pour it in here. We don't need much. And we're going to take a little bit of mineral spirits. We'll put that in here. Again, we don't need too much. You want to
Sure.
do the honors? So what happens when he tries to ignite this, he's going to get that thing going and go in there. You can probably stick it right in the bottom and put it out.
So you don't have water?
There were
So
probably
there's-
water.
There's a combustible liquid. Now you're not going to get it warm enough. It's not going to burn. What happens if you do that over here? So now we got a fire right away. So there's the difference. If you think about that, this one was making those vapors all the time at room temperature. This one is not. So a huge difference in the danger that's involved between those two. Some other things that are involved, and by the way, what we got going over here, we're cooking some stuff for you. And what that is, Dale brought in some
Saw chips.
from his
Table saw.
table saw, brought in some dust. And we put it in this can, and we're heating it up. And the point is, maybe we'll light the candle when we're talking about that. The point is that what is actually burning if you look at wood when it burns, the wood itself is not burning, it's the vapors of the wood. Just like the vapors here were burning, the wood has to be vaporized first and then mixed with air, and those vapors are what burn. We can see that. Sometimes it's easy to see in a candle, and that one's not, it's going to take a little while for that one to generate. But if you look at a flame on a candle very carefully, you'll often see that the wick itself has no fire on it. It may have a little bit red on the tip like that one does, but there's no fire touching the wick. The fire comes around the wick. So what is happening in this case is the heat is vaporizing the wax. The wax becomes liquid, comes up the wick, and gets vaporized, and it's the vapor around it that is actually mixing with the air and burning. You got to have three things for it to burn. You got to have a fuel, which in that case would be wax. In this case would be the liquid. And you've got to have oxygen, which we get from the air, and you've got to have heat. We applied the heat with that little device over there, and the heat then will keep itself generating and keep itself reorganizing. Some other things that are important is how even materials that you don't consider to be flammable, their physical characteristics are important. We could take, let's see, anybody know how to light a 2x4 on fire with a paper match? You ever try to do that? You ever try to start a fire? Think we can do it? Any wagers?
One match.
One match?
You have to
One paper.
like split it or anything?
One paper.
No,
One
no.
paper match.
Well, in fact, we'll just do two of them. How about that? At the same time. So one paper match,
Without burning my fingers.
hopefully without burning his fingers. So the state of the material here, this would be very difficult to ignite with one match. What we're doing is putting two pieces side by side so that all the heat from that match is held between those two pieces and is not allowed to go away in the air, but is sustained in there, too close together.
Oops, I just blew it out.
Was it going?
It was going.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's how you can light a 2x4 with one match, because you're concentrating the heat. The other thing you can do is make the parts smaller. And we could give you as an example, here's some steel wool. This is steel. I'm not going to hold that with my hand. Let's do that. Well, I can do it there. I just do it here.
Oh, okay.
So here we have actually steel burning in air. The reason it's burning is because it is so fine that the heat can heat all the way through it and mix with the oxygen, it'll burn up. Obviously, if we took, now that's probably aluminum, but if we took one of these cans as a piece of steel, we'd never be able to do that with it because this isn't finely divided enough. Other examples of that would be dust. We got, well, that baby is not cooking very good, is it?
That's
Well,
no.
We have in here,
Oh, that-
we have in here some wood dust. This happens to be walnut wood dust. And this is very difficult to do. Okay. That's because that dust, that is actually, let's see, where's the camera here? We're not very close, but that is actually super fine dust. You probably won't even see that. And while we're talking about that, people get concerned about dust explosions. A dust explosion in your shop is almost impossible. You hear people talk about, oh, I put in a dust collector, I'm all worried about dust explosion and that, and the pipes blow up and the dust collector blow up. The rule of thumb, in order to have a dust explosion, you have to have a concentration of dust in the air that is so thick that you could not see your hand when you put your arm out straight like that. That is super thick dust. The reason for that is every single one of those little teeny tiny dust particles, when it burns, has to ignite one next to it. So they've got to be really close together. If you get that situation, then you're going to have an explosion. A lot of us older folks might remember the explosion in Davenport in the flour mills when they blew up. So what happened there is, and what generally happens when there are flour mill explosions, they'll have a small incident somewhere that creates a pressure wave that knocks loose dust all over the place and fills the whole thing with dust all of a sudden, and then boom, you get the big explosion because you do have that really heavy concentration of dust. About the only way you're ever going to have that on your shop is say your dust collector bag would explode. You might have that kind of a concentration close to it, but otherwise, don't worry about dust explosions. The flammable vapors are all heavier than air. You tend to think about gases like natural gas is lighter than air. If natural gas comes loose, it's going to float up here somewhere. But all of these flammable vapors are going to go down. So if we're back to the spilling that can of acetone again, you got to bear in mind that if there's an ignition source down there, like say the pilot light on a water heater or anything that creates a spark, it could ignite that. The other thing that's important about whether or not that happens is a flammable range. And again, where most of us are old enough to remember carburetors on automobiles and messing around adjusting the mixture. Gasoline has a flammable range of 1.4 to 7.6 parts per, not per million, but it would be like 1.4 out of 100, up to 7.6 out of 100 parts. If it's within that mixture, it will go ahead and ignite. But if it doesn't have at least 1.4, or if it has more than 7.6, the mixture is too lean or too rich, and it will not combust. You've got to have the correct mixture of oxygen and fuel vapor. That's why sometimes we hear people say, well, hell, I've done that 1,000,000 times, and they never caught fire, because they were really lucky. They just didn't happen to find the right mixture at the source of ignition at the, saying once it ignites, Katie bar the door. Then you're probably going to have a sustained reaction. So don't assume just because you've done it before and it didn't ignite that it won't ignite next time. So you're looking for that improper, unhappy ratio. Let's see. By the way, this stuff is all on these. Read the cans. There's a lot of information on here. And while we're talking about, this is not fire safety, but while we're talking about solvents, the solvents that we use, anybody want to come up with the other major thing that we're concerned about? Anybody? Breathing it, inhaling it. Almost all of these solvents will affect the nervous system. And you don't have to have a really heavy exposure. Either a single heavy exposure or repeated small exposures will have accumulative effects on your nervous system. So it's a good thing to avoid, like it says on the can, don't inhale the vapors. Stay away from them. Another thing, while we're talking about...
Steve, before you get too far away from that, is it over lifetime, or is it within a short period of time?
It's over a lifetime. Yeah,
So it accumulates even over, like if you do small exposures.
I'm as crazy as I am because I've been breathing this stuff too damn long. So yeah, it can have all kinds of effects on your nervous system. They're not good. None of them are going to be good. So these people I suppose we should say kids that go out and huff the solvents and stuff for a high, they're doing serious damage to themselves long term. Other things, we can do this through the can,
sure.
through there, I think.
Sure.
Other things that happen if liquids or dust, we showed you what happens with dust. This happens to be a liquid here. That is just a little bit of gasoline in there. And what we're doing is atomizing it. So you can see that if you're, almost like a blowtorch, if you're blowing that stuff out there, it's different.
So the aerosols are in the same boat.
Y'all probably have used this, right? Off. And if you ever read this, you'll notice that it says on the back here, flammable, contents under pressure, do not use near heat, sparks, or open flame. And here's why. So next time you spray insect
Don't be
repellent
smoking.
on yourself, anybody around you smoking or something like that, you might want to say they should probably step aside while you're doing that. Smells like mosquitoes in here all of a sudden. There's something else that can happen. I think I lost track of where
Yeah,
we
that's
were
why I
going here.
moved the sheet over here.
So I'm going to back up a little bit. We talked about the fire triangle, three things we need for fire to exist. And then we want to talk about the classes of fire. We'll have a video about that here after a bit. But we classify fires into generally A, B, and C. And they are, the class A fires are the wood, paper, rubbish, the normal things that we have, like the wood shavings and all that sort of thing. Class B is the flammable liquids, like these things here. Class C is either or both of those with an electrical hazard involved. Now that can be important to you if you're trying to put something out with water and you have a high voltage electrical situation in there. It's possible to set up a situation where you could receive a shock. That's highly overrated in the fire service. We say that if you're more than about 5 feet away from even 10,000 volts and you're using a combination nozzle which breaks the water up, it's not going to flash back. We don't suggest that firefighters do that, just in case.
And really, the reason for that is with the combination nozzle you're talking about, you're taking that water and you're breaking it up in little beads of water, so the power can't come up. If
They're
you got
air gaps.
They're air gaps. So if you got a hose with a straight tip on it, and you get what we call laminar flow, that means that there's a steady stream, nice stream, and it doesn't have the spacing between airdrops. The power can back up through that.
Yeah, especially if you're using, like, if you happen to be using salt water or water that's contaminated with something else that tends to make it more of an electrolyte.
So are those three categories then determine what kind of extinguisher?
Yes, absolutely, and we're going to talk more about that. There's another class, and that's Class D. If you've ever seen, titanium is one. What am I?
Any metals. basically.
Well, yeah. There was a metal fire right there.
Batteries?
Lithium, magnesium is a very common one. What we would see in car fires sometimes is they have magnesium parts in there, and if it gets hot enough, the magnesium starts burning. If the magnesium burns, you'll know it because it burns with a really brilliant white fire. And it's the normal, if you put water on it, you're just going to make it worse. Because it burns so hot that basically what it does is break the water down into its basic contents, and then it burns back again. A reaction that becomes hydrogen and oxygen and water again.
Is that what they talk about? There is not termite, but there is some kind of
Termite.
where it essentially
Thermite.
thermite. There we go.
Thermite.
So where it takes the metal, I think, wasn't that what they were talking about with World Tower buildings that
Yes.
heated up the metal structure and then it potentially melted
Well, now,
the
if you're talking
structure?
about a building, you mean like the Twin Towers, for example? That's a whole different story. They didn't actually burn. The steel, those were steel towers. And, I ran into a conspiracy theorist guy that claimed that the Twin Trade Towers were brought down by CDI, Controlled Demolition Incorporated. He said it wasn't those airplanes because that jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt steel was the reason. Actually, what happens there is that steel begins to lose its strength at about 400 degrees. You've all seen pictures of buildings that burned that had steel, parts that were all just hanging down and all misshapen. So when the Twin Trade Towers, and when those buildings were built, they're insulated. There's a spray foam insulation that goes on those so that they can suffer fire and not melt. But if you crash an airplane through there, that insulation is not there anymore.
So is it then causing kind of what you did between the two pieces of wood where it's maintaining that heat in a
Well,
confined space?
It's just that
The steel loses its strength.
yes.
It's just
And-
the strength.
and
Okay.
In the building collapse.
So then what is the thermite or what's that?
Thermite is aluminum powder and rust, metal oxide. And that causes a really, really strong, really hot fire. Railroads use, if you've ever happened to be driving along and seen the railroad working on rails where they got this big smoky thing going around the rail, that's what they're doing. They're fusing two rails together by basically building a little dam around it, putting thermite in there, setting it on fire, and it melts the steel together. And then they grind the lumps off so that so the railroad can run over it and go. But they're fusing them together using thermite. There is, by the way, there's some thermite in this kit. We're not going to play with it, but we have we have some. I always thought it'd be kind of fun when I was younger. I always thought it'd be kind of fun to go find some railroad car sitting somewhere and take a little thermite and weld the wheels to the rail just to see what happened when they drive off. I thought that was a little too damaging to actually go and do it. So, let's see, back up and look at this. Yeah. A little bit about spontaneous combustion. I brought along another thing here. This is Watco's Danish oil. And again, read the can, because this one, if I can find it here, says danger. Rags, steel wool, or waste soaked with Watco Danish oil may spontaneously catch fire. So, this has probably tongue oil. Where's is it?
Linseed oil, I think it's, and tongue oil too.
Linseed and tongue, whatever. I'm not going to bother to, but it'll be a vegetable oil. If you take the oil out of your engine, that's a mineral oil, and that will not spontaneously combust. You can take and wipe that oil up with rags all day long and throw them in cans, throw them wherever you want. They will not spontaneously combust, but this stuff will. And you got to be careful, because this is a good example of one that does not have, this is gold size. I have a date on that of 2015, so I had it for a while. But I read this whole can, and it says absolutely nothing about the dangers of this particular material. However, it does say that the contents are phenolic resin, ester gum, tongue oil, and linseed oil. So immediately, I put this little Post-it note on there for myself to remind myself that if I use this stuff, it says danger, vegetable oil in this. So what I do is that those rags, the advice is that you get a can with water in it, and that you put all those rags under the water and close the lid on the can. I think that's a little excessive. What I do is let them spread them out and let them dry for 2 or 3 days. Then the problem's gone. But I slipped up here a couple of weeks ago. I was those little goblets I've been making. I've been using this stuff on it, and I had a bunch of paper towels that I used, and I spread them out on the counter on the workbench, and I went about my business. And probably about half an hour or hour later, I walked over there and I thought, where the hell are those paper towels I laid here? And without having any conscious knowledge of it, recognition of it, I had gone over and picked those up and thrown them in a wastebasket. So fortunately, I noticed that they were gone and went over and picked them back out. What happens there is that that fire that's going on there is actually an oxidation reaction. When this finish dries, it's also an oxidation reaction, and it does create heat. In all normal uses, that heat, it just dissipates into the air. But if you take a bunch of those rags and throw them in a confined area like a waste can or something like that, and they're all bunched together, and that heat can begin to grow inside there and can't get away, and it causes the rest of the reaction to speed up. And then more heat is produced. And then at some point, poof, you've got a flame. You got a
So
fire
is that
going.
then the same thing like the haystacks where because of the
Yeah.
heat?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. Again, the hay is organic, and that's what we're talking about here is an organic material. And the hay bale that's put in too wet and then put in the barn where it's confined, it will spontaneously combust. Yeah, there's a lot of barns that have burnt down because of that.
Our number one exhibit there is not doing anything. It's still
I
on.
think it's out. Isn't the flame out?
Those,
I think it's burning. Is it burning? Or did it go out? I think it's still burning.
I think it's still burning. It's hard to see with that
Yeah, alcohol flame, it's hard
alcohol
to see.
flame.
By the way, just, it means nothing to us, but one of the things that burns absolutely pure that you cannot see is hydrogen. So we're taught if we have a hydrogen fire, to find the fire is to take a broom, and poke around with the broom. When the broom bursts into flame, you know that's where the hydrogen
You
flame
can
is.
walk right into it and not realize you're
Yeah.
walking into a hydrogen fire.
Is the is it fuel for the race car drivers? Don't they also have
That's-
some invisible?
Well, that's
They use a lot of alcohol, yeah.
that's
alcohol, okay.
yeah, not grain alcohol or
Yeah, and
Ethanol.
that's hard to see. That's what's burning there. So what this was supposed to have done here, which it is not doing for some reason, I don't know why.
He did it this afternoon. Took us a
Yeah.
while. That's what the smell was when you came in. It's cooking.
Oh, by
but-
the way, see that liquid coming out of there? The one of the products of combustion is water. So you've probably seen that out of the tailpipe of your automobile, especially when it's cold, and you start up the engine. You are actually producing some water, and it condenses in the system, and then you see it drop out. Once your exhaust system warms up, that comes out as vapor that you don't see. Nothing there. Nothing. Okay. So
This-
what we go ahead.
No, I was going to say this afternoon, it took us a while, but we finally heated it up, and you could see the products coming out, but we waited long enough, it started to turn yellow. And once it started to turn yellow, we knew that we were getting some combustible.
So what we wanted to show with that was the fact that it's not the wood that burns, it's
The vapor.
the vapors. And we're trying to heat it up and boil the vapors out of that sawdust in there, but we probably should have had some plain sawdust.
I know a guy that took a pickup, in his pickup, he put a stove in the back and started a fire, burnt some wood in it, then he captured the vapors off of it, and he ran that to his carburetor in his truck, and he would drive his truck with firewood.
So vapors travel, and there's a way we can show that. We're going to use some acetone here. You got fire?
Mm-hmm.
So this burns pretty well. We're just going to drop it in here, let it heat up a little bit, and then we'll put this fire out here. You know what we don't have? Oh. Like that. There it went. There it went. You saw that go? Okay. So we can do that again since we didn't have that set up very well. Let's light him again. Now,
Now you should see the vapor coming down. See the vapor coming down the tube?
and that went out. Nope, didn't either. There it goes. So it flashed back. So that's how, now we could see those because we heated that up. If we'd have put that in there without heating it up, those vapors would have been invisible coming down here. But that's just to show the illustration. There it went again. It's just, the illustration is that those vapors, once you spilled that flammable liquid, those vapors can travel for quite a ways and flash back all of a sudden. Did it just go again? Or we got it burning up here now?
Yeah.
There you go.
The mad
Here
science.
it comes again.
I assume those are glass tubes,
Plastic tube.
but it won't catch on fire.
Oh, if we let it go long enough, it will. So, we got her cooking now. Here it comes. And it's gonna burn here. Here it comes.
You can see it coming down the tube.
Okay. We're gonna, at some point, here it comes again.
It'll keep, as long as the fire keeps converting the vapors in the box here, it'll continue to do that.
So, okay. Bill, are we ready to do, well, I'm gonna shut that down.
Why don't you lift it a little?
Let's talk about extinguishers. There, I think you got it that time. We have to get some fire, we might have to call Rock Island here pretty quick.
We'll get them, then we'll do the demo.
That would be embarrassing. We ought to talk about this. These are kind of pricey, but this one I've had, God, I probably had this one for 50 years. Safety cans are a really good way to keep your gasoline or whatever flammable liquids you have. You can buy these in all sizes. We used to have in this kit, there used to be some really small ones that were nice. But what happens with a safety can, you notice it's kind of different here. This lid, you have to do this and pull this back. There's a spring here that keeps this closed. So if you knock this over, it's still closed. It's not going to leak. The other thing is that if this gets involved in a fire and pressure begins to build up in here, what will happen is this lid will open up enough to let that pressure out, and that fire will burn, the liquid, the vapor will burn out here. And inside here, I don't know, yeah, no. Inside here is a screen. I don't think I can get,
Some of them
no.
pop out.
Yeah, that one's pretty well locked in there. But there's a screen inside here. It's a brass screen. And the flame will not, that's another demonstration we used to do, we're not going to do it here. The flame will not go through that brass screen. The heat, if you get the vapor coming through there and it's burning out here, it'll burn down to the screen, but the heat is dissipated in the screen and it won't propagate the flame down inside. So you will not have the situation where the flame goes down, if you had the proper mixture, the flame goes down here and causes a boof or blows your can up. So these are much, much safer than what most of us keep gas in all the time.
There's a good chance that you're going to be above the gas vapor in there anyway, just because it's enclosed and it's going to be above the flammable level.
Oh yeah, the mixture is going to be too rich to burn. But if you did have the right mixture, that flame arrestor right there would keep it from propagating. These are about, I think probably starting around 60 bucks or so. So they're a bit pricey. But like I said, I've had this one for at least 50 years. So, and I've got a couple of them. And I feel a lot better when I go to buy gasoline for the lawnmowers and stuff, and I put this in my car rather than something that I could knock over and spill or start leaking and have gasoline all over inside my vehicle. If you got a pickup truck or something like that, you're a lot better off. We're going to talk a little bit about fire extinguishers too. The most common fire extinguisher is this kind right here, which is this is the one that belongs in here. And this one, remember we talked about the classes of fire? A, B, and C. By the way, the steel, I don't know if I said it was D, class D fire. There is one more class, which is K, which is like when you go to McDonald's or someplace like that, the grease that they have there is class K, special class all by itself. Why, I don't know, but it is. So basically you have a safety pin here that keeps this thing from operating. You have to pull the pin out. The pin has a little bit of a seal here so that we know that these seals generally have This one may or may not. A lot of times you'll have serial numbers on here. So if you want to be sure that nobody's tampered with this, you just know what the serial number was on this little tag. You keep a track of that and you go back and look at it. We unfortunately have to pay somebody to come and look at this fire extinguisher once a year for, how much, Phil's not here, but what is it, $30 or something like that?
I think it's actually 50, but we're going to be taking it to them next year so that it's cheaper, because it's, most of the cost is them coming out here.
It's absolutely, I rail against this, and we're getting a political discussion now, but that is because the people that do this kind of business talk to the city into adopting the codes that say they got to come around and look at it, you got to pay them. There's no damn reason why we can't look at this, because all they're going to do is look at that gauge there, make sure it's in the green, and if it is, they're going to sign that tag or punch that tag. Hey, we inspected your fire extinguisher, and we got to pay them for that. If you've got one of these at home and it has one of these gauges, look at it every once in a while. As long as that gauge is in the green, you're fine. There's a really, really far out possibility that there would be no pressure and the gauge is just hung up, but that's the chance of that is extremely small. So when you pull this pin out, you break that seal, and then you can squeeze this. You want to, before you do that, you want to have a hold of this, because if you don't, this is going to be going like that, and you're going to have a big white cloud all around you. So you want to use this and aim it at the fire. And we'll see a video here after a bit. A very common mistake that people make is they try to shoot this at the flame. You don't want to shoot at the flame, you want to shoot at the material that is burning. Again, I could sit here with, let's say I had a squirt gun, I could shoot a stream of water through that flame all day long and it's not going to stop. If I shoot that stream of water right down on the base of that little wick right there, it's going to stop immediately. And that's the principle that's involved. So another thing that's important, and we're going to stop the video and show you because they make a couple of mistakes in the video. This material comes out of here at a pretty damn high rate, and with quite a bit of force. So you want to have a hold. But you don't want to be too close to the fire. The instructions are usually 5 or 6 feet. I'd say 5 or 6 feet is too close. You want to be a ways away from it, and you want to aim that stream at the base. They also tell you to sweep back and forth. That's a no-no. You want to make one slow pass across that flame, especially if it's flammable liquid, because if you do this, what you're doing is putting the fire out over there and it's okay over here, and you go really quick back and forth, and the fire just dances through that and keeps on burning. If you send one properly, you've got to have a high enough concentration of this material, so you get a high concentration and you sweep slowly across that fire. Don't get too excited, take it easy, go across there, and you're going to be successful with it, as opposed to this craziness. Yeah.
Is there a particular direction? So let's say you have an enclosed space and open on one side. Do you want to go towards the open, or from open towards, let's say it's 3 walls, right? And you have a door. Do you want to sweep towards the door, or from the door towards the walls?
If that situation, if there were a door, I would probably sweep away from the door, because I'm assuming the door might be someplace you want to go.
Well, I'm more thinking
start
like
there.
oxygen source or whatever, and yes, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, this flammable liquids, these are really good. This ABCs are really good for flammable liquids. They're not quite that good with common wood, paper, and rubbish. What they need to do is you need to coat that material with this powder. Again, one good slow sweep across that and get a good coating on everything. Anything that's hot, this powder will stick to and create a little film on it, and that inhibits the combustion. That's how they work to start with. And the fact that they're rated ABC is the fact that this is non-conducting. So you can use it on a Class C fire and you're not going to get electrocuted. Like I said, I'm a little crazy. In my home, I have 3 of these. There's one in my bedroom, one in the front hall closet, and one down in the shop studio. And I much prefer this to this for a couple of reasons. This is 2.5 gallons of water with 100 pounds of air pressure in it. When you fill these, there's a little thing in there that tells you when you got the water to the right height, so you have enough space left in there for the air pressure that will have 100 pounds of air will expel the entire contents of this. Water is, we all know what water is. This stuff, if you get this stuff into a computer, or if you have a little fire going around your lathe and some of this got into your VFD, kiss it goodbye, because this will destroy electronics. So that's the bad thing about this, why I would prefer these. If there were no other choice, I mean, if it's a difference between losing your studio, your home, or something like that, or your car, and worried about getting electronics, then go ahead and use that. But these, you can buy these for as little as about 60 or 70 bucks. Most of them run about 110 or so. And you, of course, this is just a common old, this is the same connector here to put the air pressure in as on your tire, on the tires on your car. So if you've got an air compressor, you can fill this and put water in it and fill it up, and as long as you don't freeze it, you're fine for a long, long time.
Sometimes, if you got a smaller fire, you can put your thumb on like a grass fire. You can put your thumb
Yeah.
on the end and feather and make your water go a lot further. But the other thing, if I can add to what Steve's saying, water, it's cooling. That's all it's doing, is it's cooling, which you can put the fire out by cooling. This is coating the material so that the material doesn't burn. So that's kind of the difference between water and
Remember that fire triangle, the 3 things you need? This is going to basically eliminate the oxygen by coating the burning material. This is going to take away the heat.
So when forest fires, I assume when they dump the water, that's that cooling effect, but then if it's,
That really brilliant red color stuff.
That's
that
the
they use,
chemical stuff
that's a
that
fire retardant
okay.
that will
and it
do-
sticks
actually do
to
both.
So
sticks to everything.
that's the equivalent of whatever foam is in
Well,
there.
Kind of, but not totally. I mean, it's the same idea, but it's a little bit different.
Different chemical,
Right,
but the
right.
idea or the principle is kind of the same.
So you use this, you would use it, basically you would hold it like this. And again, keep the water on the material that's burning, not on the flames. And as Dale said, you can put your thumb over the end of this and make a nice little fan spray. I used to, just for the fun of it, to win a bet, I used to put out gasoline pan fires by fanning that and sweeping across gasoline. That takes a little practice, but it's possible.
If you got a flammable liquid, you see people making a mistake. They get it right down in the liquid and just boils up the liquid. You don't want to do that, because as soon as you're doing that, you're kicking up more vapors. So you want to sweep across it slowly, but you don't want to stir the product, especially in liquids.
Bill, let's go ahead with, we got 3 videos here. Let's go ahead and run the first 2 videos. The purpose of those videos is to give you a good idea. Let me back up a little bit. We've all seen the movie, The Towering Inferno, and God knows how many other movies, the Chicago Fire Department stuff, that's I can't remember the name of that one. That's a regular monthly or weekly or something deal. We've all seen those people, seen those firefighters go into those burning buildings. The air is just like it is in here, except there's maybe a nice little fire over there, a couple little fires over here, and so on and so forth. That's not what it's like at all. You go into a burning building, you're probably not going to be able to see a damn thing. And we're going to see a heat line come down. I'll point that out to you. If you get into that situation, you've heard people say get down and crawl. That's extremely important. Let's go ahead with that first video. Yeah, this.
We've had firefighters come out of houses before when the top of their helmet is melted, the visor is melted. So that's why they want you to keep low, to keep you out of that heat, because that heat is going to rise, and that's what Steve's talking about.
So we got, back there in the corner by that couch is a wastebasket that's burning. Go ahead, Bill. We're just going to let this one go. So watch the clock. Now think about this. How long is it going to take you to figure out that you have a fire in your house? And once you know you got a fire in the house, how long is it going to take you to dial 911? And how long is it going to take you to have that conversation with the really frustrating conversation with the dispatcher, where she's going to keep asking you all kinds of questions, and you're going to say, hey, my house is burning, shut the hell up and get people out here to help me.
It's what we call an incipient fire.
Yeah, that would, either one of these fire extinguishers would put that out in just a couple of seconds, real easily. Well, almost a minute's gone by now.
This is where you would sweep just
Now,
either from the sofa to the
yeah, on this one, I'd shoot that ABC right down at the top of that wastebasket.
Okay.
But pretty soon it's going to get a lot more complicated than that. And if you have a more complicated fire, you want to start at the lower part. Bear in mind that if you start at the upper part and you put that fire out up there and you move down to the bottom, that heat is still being produced and it will reignite what's up above. You want to kill the heat at the bottom first. All right, well, a minute and a half. Things are getting kind of hairy here. Now, this one isn't quite as true as a real situation, because this room happens to have an open front. If you had a solid wall here. Now notice what's happening up above. See that? You're like filling that room upside down with heat. If you walked in there and stood up right now, you'd probably get your hair singed. And the heat's going to begin to radiate down. It's convective heat that's up there. Now it's spreading across the ceiling. We're just at 2 minutes. And now notice that the papers on the desk, the radiant heat is so great that the papers on the desk or table down there just caught fire just over 2 minutes. And you can see the heat line come down and see the things in the background burst into flame. And the couch now is burning, again from a combination of the chaise lounge or what, Barca lounge or whatever the heck that thing is. And now the floor, look at the floor. This is the point of flashover right here. Where were we? How many minutes were we right there?
Yeah, catch you one.
We lost our clock, but we're about 2.5 minutes. So, when we talk about using a fire extinguisher, one of the questions always is, where should I put the fire extinguisher? And my answer is always by the exit door. That's where mine are in my studio, and that's the reason why. If you're going to go after that fire extinguisher, have that door at your back, because you could go down, you could go the wrong way and then you're trapped. Another thing to remember is that the stuff with the materials we're dealing with all around us, these chairs here, for example, the paint and everything else in here, when it burns or begins to burn or begins to create vapors, those are extremely toxic. And you can very quickly get into a situation where only 1 or 2 inhalations will put you unconscious. A lot of people that die in home fires never get burns. They die in bed because lack of oxygen or carbon monoxide or other noxious vapors produced by the fire kill them right where they are before they ever wake up. So you assume you would start coughing, wake up, and have plenty of time to go to the door and get out. Not necessarily so at all. Let's go to the second one. Wait, hang on a second, not quite yet. The second one, we're going to show you another room and contents fire only. This time, the ignition is on a Christmas tree. Now, a Christmas tree will produce about 100,000 BTUs in about 30 seconds. And probably 100,000 BTUs is about what your furnace will put out in an hour of running. So you can imagine how much heat is coming in. And this would also be what might happen if you would spill a flammable liquid in your shop, or if you had a big pile of chips, like Greg, you were telling me, Greg related a story. He just saw a video of Des Moines Woodturners, was it? Chicago Woodturners? Okay, they used a video in one of their safety presentations where a woodturner had a real video. He was working and a gouge fell down onto the floor, and the point of the gouge hit an electrical wire, which caused an arc, which set chips, the big pile of chips around him, on fire, which was how much of a fire in a very short period of time? A big fire in no time at all. And fortunately, he had a fire extinguisher and was able to control it. But bear in mind that it isn't always going to be a relatively slow fire like that first video we watched. Let's watch the second one.
If you'll notice how slow that first one is, that's why smoke detectors are so important, because that'll pick up on that fire almost immediately. And you can see how it builds down. That's going to give you time to get out of the house.
Watch this one. Now, couldn't you see spilling a gallon of flammable liquid?
You can still get out of this, but you're going to have to creep along the floor to get out. But
See, we already seeing, look at the floors beginning to create vapors already.
Yeah, it's beyond getting out now.
And you're done for. 30 seconds. So we show those because, unfortunately, pop culture gives us a really untrue vision of what fires are like in buildings.
Well, in Chicago Fire, of course, they have special masks so that they can see their face, because they want the people to see their face. We have small windows in ours. But at Texas A&M, we had a cement house down there that everything was cement. So we could get in, and we'd, of course, with the Scott Air Pack on, and we'd start an incipient fire, and we'd watch it build up until the flashover. That's pretty impressive if you're inside the house and you get this flame and all of a sudden just goes over the top of you on the ceiling. It's pretty impressive.
We had for a while, Iowa had a residential sprinkler demonstration trailer. And by the way, fire sprinklers for your home that would put in 100% into any of that have been available for about 50 years. But you don't have them in your home because the builders associations will have nothing to do with them, and they have a very strong lobby. So they keep them out of the codes. And I even know, I've known firefighters that were opposed because the room and contents firefighter is the meat and potatoes of the fire department. And they were concerned that if you start putting sprinkler systems in, they'd lose their jobs. This is true, this is real.
Isn't Davenport required that?
No, I think Rock Island put in a
Not on
residential
residential,
sprinkler.
not on residential, single residentials.
Mobile homes have had it, the furnace compartment for years. They've had a sprinkler in there.
Yeah. Wait, if you build a multi-family residential unit, then you're going to have sprinklers. If you go into any of the apartment buildings or condominiums or anything like that where you have multiple residents, you'll look around, you'll see the sprinklers. And hotels, motels, any place where people sleep overnight, because that's the bad thing. Now this one's going to be on how to use a fire extinguisher, and I'll.
Portable fire extinguishers are built to extinguish fires that are in the incipient phase. A fire in this phase is roughly the size of an office trash can. If the fire is larger than that and is starting to generate a lot of heat, it's beyond what a portable fire extinguisher can handle. In fact, most portable fire extinguishers only have enough extinguishing agent to last about 30 seconds. In the event of a fire, always make the decision that your safety is your priority. Never put yourself in the position where the fire is blocking you from the exit, and only fight the fire if you feel comfortable and safe doing so. With that being said, here are the easy steps to using a fire extinguisher. Use the PASS method. That's P-A-S-S. Pull the pin. If there's a zip tie on the pin like this one has, it'll break with the force of the pull. Aim the nozzle at the base of the flames. Squeeze the trigger. And sweep at the base of the flames from side to side. After you've extinguished the fire, always keep watch for about 15 minutes to make sure it's fully out. Once the fire is out, it's not uncommon for the fire to reignite a few minutes later. So make sure that you're keeping watch until you're certain that the flame is completely out.
The question is, what about propane? Propane is liquefied petroleum gas, and it's usually, well, if you have it like in a propane container like at home, it's going to be warm, but as soon as you release it into the air, it's going to get very, very cold. However, it's heavier than air, and it will go down. Remember, many, many, many years ago, there was a 4-H situation. The 4-H people were meeting out in Scott County somewhere, and the guy went down to light the furnace, a propane furnace, and a house blew up and burned, what, 20 or 30 kids?
I hunted on that farm.
Did you? Yeah. Yeah, it was a national
News event.
incident all over the place. But there's a good example of the propane pool down there, and when he went down to light that furnace, that was the ignition source that it needed, and boom, the place blew up. So I don't know what else to say about it. Dale,
My point is that it's heavier than air.
yeah, all the
Whereas natural gas rises.
Natural gas is
This
the only-
goes down.
Yep, it's the natural gas is the only exception. All of these vapors are heavier than air. Dale has dealt with liquefied natural gas, which I have not.
Liquefied natural gas, we have a big tank in Riverdale. And when they put that in, I was really concerned. One day down at Texas A&M when we were there, they had brought in a semi-load of them. Now that's at a cryogenic temperature, probably 400 degrees below zero. That's, in order to keep it in a liquid, you got to keep it at that cryogenic temperature. But they dumped this semi-load out into a small pool, and they lit it off. And I thought, boy, this is going to be interesting to watch. But it's so cold that they put it out with a couple wheel fire extinguishers. And the reason being is it generates some heat, but not enough heat to be able to convert that from a liquid to a gas.
Something we don't, there's a little liquefied natural gas around. I think some of the buses here on this side.
That's
use LNG.
compressed natural, that's compressed natural
Oh, that's
gas.
compressed, CNG, okay. So, but you see a lot of propane trucks around, so.
Propane. And I worked at Alcoa my career, and we made a lot of the big spheres that we hauled for the ships to haul it. And it's really, the reason we made it out of aluminum, I don't want to get off in the ditch here, but the reason we made it out of aluminum, because of the cryogenic temperatures, it can only be made out of nickel cast steel or aluminum. So that's why we made a lot of the tanks. But the ship would power itself across by the gas that was created by warming it up en route. And that's how they powered the ship. But these spheres were like 119 and 113 feet in diameter. There were 5 of them in the ship. And those are the ships that were grounded because they didn't want to take natural gas over to Europe. But another story.
Any other questions?
What about lithium batteries? What do you do with them to keep them from burning, or?
Well, I don't know what you guys are doing now. I know one thing they're doing is they're making, like if you got a car that's burning, they're making like things like this that you throw over the entire car. So this is basically a welding blanket.
I guess my question, is there any danger in using the kinds of batteries as far as charging them for power drills, that type of thing?
Yeah, it's on a much smaller scale, so I don't think, probably don't see the problem there. But like Steve says, if we have a car fire that catches on fire, we just let it burn because there's nothing we can do to put it out. The real problem is that when they park in the garage and then they decide to burn, they take your garage with it. So
Well, they had that ship that was transporting electric cars off of Sweden or
Right,
whatever
right.
that caught on fire.
Right.
And they just had to, I think, let it burn. It burned for like a week.
Yeah,
mhm.
yeah, they're, what-
Is there any danger if you're, say you're trying to weld aluminum and it turns out to be magnesium?
I don't know. You can weld magnesium.
You just can't get it so
So-
hot that it's going to burn. but-
How hot do you have to, I know, you know, flash bulbs were basically magnesium inside. And through school, the science class, they take a little thin strip of magnesium and burn it, just flashes off. But how hot would you have to get a magnesium casting before that would be a problem?
That's a good question. I don't know
Well,
the answer to that one.
In a car, for example, with a magnesium transmission, a lot of the transmissions are magnesium. The car will get the oil fire around the car will get hot enough to sometimes burn it. So, that's the kind of temperatures.
But I think the other stuff are alloys. It's aluminum with magnesium for not the frame, but like where your seats, those frame of the seat,
Well-
I think is magnesium, aluminum alloy.
Yeah, but the aluminum's not going to burn like magnesium.
Right, so
but
that's, I don't
it's-
think
it-
the
it-
aluminum or the alloy burns. It's only, as you said, like if it's the transfer or not.
Most magnesium, pure magnesium's going to be magnesium. I'm not sure whether we put magnesium in the alloys, where there's an alloy that has magnesium in. I don't think there is.
Most of the, I think 50% of.
But it's still not enough. It's still not enough. It's not going to burn if it's in the aluminum. Aluminum's basically going to melt at 1,000, 1,200 degrees, but it won't burn.
Well, but I think when it's in alloy with magnesium, it
Well-
raises that temperature.
I say that, but remember Steve said if you get it fine enough, it'll burn. I mean, this is steel.
Like if the gears are grinding and you've got lots of shavings,
Could be, yeah, could be. One comment I'd like to make that we forgot to cover, if, I have one of these in my shop too, and this is my first go-to. But if you recharge it, put water in it. You can't overfill it because like Steve said, there's a tube that comes down in here, so you've got to guarantee enough airspace that you can pressurize it because water won't compress. But the point is, when you recharge it, you fill it up with water and you put this on and you fill it with your compressor. Never, ever, ever stand over the top of it when you're doing that. Because there's been cases where this is blown off.
is it a screw?
It's a nut that screws onto it.
No, but
This nut screws off.
I'm just, it looks like there's a line, so it's two parts.
This,
Oh, that's for the,
that's
That's-
welded.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when you're adding water through like an opening on there, it's not like you take the tape off.
well, you gotta take this off to fill it.
Okay.
But there's a tube in there. Don't take the tube out and try to fill it and then put the tube back in. Leave the tube in it. But the point is, this nut can strip and pull off. And if you got your head over this thing, putting the air in, never ever do that. There's been cases where nuts come off and taken.
So I assume you want to check if you're taking that off, if the screw is stripped, that you don't want to potentially use it.
I'm not sure I understand the
Well,
question.
Isn't that the bolt on top that you unscrew,
This nut here,
that nut?
that's just a nut that goes over on the threads on this piece.
Right, you would unscrew it and pull it out, and you would pour water in it, right?
We got to take the. So what Steve's going to do is he's going to take the pressure off of it. So what he'll do is he'll go outside, tip it upside down, hit the valve, and that'll take the pressure off so you can take that off. don't cross-thread. Or the other problem that can happen is with years of service, if you use it a lot, it'll start to fatigue around that thread. The next thing you know, that's when it's going to fly out. In the fire service, we use a dry chem that's a non-pressurized container, and then it's got a piece on top that you push that, and there's a cylinder inside with gas in it that pressurizes it. And that's hurt a lot of people when they stand over the top and hit that.
Yes.
You can put out a lot of fire with that can, especially if, like grass fires, we used to put a lot of grass fires out. That's how we put our grass fires out. If you put your finger over the ends, you can just kind of fan that along and take that fire line and put it right out. And it just walk down the fire line.
The kind of fires we have here for grass fires.
Right, yes.
Out west.
That's a different story.
Any other question? Question? Let's go. We're done. Pick it up. That's it. Thank you.